Wednesday, October 23rd on the Just Baseball Show. You got Jack, you got Peter. You do not have Arm. You are not getting the World Series preview. The whole World Series preview is going to happen tomorrow. So we want to get all three of us on. You will get that on Thursday so you can digest it for about 36 to 40 hours whenever you do get up and then get ready for game one of the World Series. We will also have a World Series game one preview. That'll be a shorter episode coming out on Friday. But today we are doing interesting narratives that could come true this World Series. And Peter brought some narratives like, hey, if this guy performs well, does he go in the pantheon of this? Things of that nature, and we'll talk valid or invalid. I also found what I deemed as the World Series moment from each of the last 10 fall classics. It's going to be a fun show. And of course, it's brought to us by
BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks, and they got something new for the postseason. We've been hyping it up because it's awesome. BetMGM Sportsbook account holders who opt into the bullpen jackpot promotion place a straight bet of at least $10 on their choice of any MLB player to hit a home run will win a share of a daily $50,000 BetMGM bullpen jackpot if the player they wagered on hits a home run that lands in an MLB team bullpen. Prizing is going to be paid out in bonus bets that expire in 7 days. Offers available every single day throughout the World Series, and all customers got to do $10 or more wager on any MLB player to hit a home run. Again, lands in the bullpen, they will win a share of a $50,000 daily prize. Make sure to use code JUSTBASEBALL for that first bet offer up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your wager loses to get started. Gambling problem? Call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 years or older. Terms and conditions apply. So, in terms of the narratives, yeah, this is a segment that I like to call like the could be. What could happen? Because, of course, none of these things have happened yet. They're based on what if this certain star player does really well in the World Series, where is he going to be put in the pantheon of baseball greats in seasons past? Because with Yankees Dodgers, we couldn't have any more star power. Since 2022, the leader in WAR in Major League Baseball, Aaron Judge. Number 3, Shohei Ohtani. Number 4, Freddie Freeman. Number 6, Mookie Betts. Number 7, Juan Soto. So of the 7 top players in Major League Baseball since 2022, 5 of them are in this World Series.
So I think it's the top 4 since the start of the 2020 season, but since the start of 22, you said what? That's 4 of the top 6. So we're missing 2 and 5.
No, 4 of the top 7. So Francisco Lindor, who just got bounced, is actually number 2 since 2022, and Bobby Witt Jr. is number 5 since 2022. But you're right, since 2020, top 4 all in this. Wanted to include one more. I think it's Freddie, who isn't quite in there. He doesn't have a narrative, but there are plenty of others. And I got into my baseball history bag, which then makes this one of my favorite episodes to record. So I'm down there in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, 60s, 70s, all the way up here to find comparisons, because in this series, we are truly witnessing all-time greatness here with some of these players. And if they do end up having the World Series of their lives, we have to start talking about them in terms of, are they in the greatest of all time conversation?
So that's something that is hard for me to wrap my head around. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's hard. And it's
really
hard for me in other sports too. Like men's tennis, it's really hard for me to understand that I
Other
watched
sport reference. We got one already.
Okay, this one's actually fully
No,
valid.
I love it. I'm not even making fun of you. I just think it's a cool trend that I think listeners of the show should start tracking. How many different sports does Jack bring up during a episode recording of the Just Baseball Show?
Okay, and here's the thing. Some of them could be forced, whatever. I'll hear that. This one I don't think is forced, because it's hard for me to wrap my head around the fact that we watched the 3 greatest men's tennis players of all time growing up, because sports have history, and growing up a baseball fan, you know that history trumps everything. And how can you be watching the best of all time when you hear everybody talk about the greatness of the 20s and the greatness of the 40s and the greatness of the 60s and Ricky Henderson to the 80s and the 90s? I hear so much about these guys that I never watched that I'm like, oh, you're right. That almost debunks the idea that I'm watching the GOATs. And like men's tennis, that was very hard for me to wrap my head around that like Nadal, Federer, Djokovic are probably the three greatest men's tennis players of all time. And it's
Yeah.
hard for me to like understand that. I'm like, but I heard a lot about Pete Sampras and like Andre Agassi and guys like that. Basketball, it's like, okay, I get the LeBron thing, obviously, but like Nikola Jokic might be one of the greatest bigs of all time.
Yeah.
Really? I remember when he got drafted during the Taco Bell commercial. That's not true. But when it's all said and done, shit, it might be the case. You're right. Like Otani, it's easy for me to grasp because it's just been beaten to a pulp in me. Like it's so obvious that he's one of the greatest that we've ever seen. But a guy like Soto is on a borderline unprecedented start to his major league career. A guy like Mookie Betts has an MVP. He may have what, three World Series rings. Like
We'll talk
it,
about it.
it is kind of crazy to think about that all of these guys. Like, shit, Aaron Judge broke Maris's record. That record from 1961 we talked about forever. Like Judge did that 2 years ago. It is hard for me to understand that we might be watching all time greatness.
100%. And also comparing throughout history is very, very challenging, right? In the 20s and the 30s, pre-integration of Major League Baseball, how do we truly judge that era? Also in 1955, that was the first year we even got the World Series MVP. So guys like Babe Ruth, others, they don't have World Series MVPs. Does that dock them? Of course not. The award wasn't even made yet.
Yeah.
Also, when identifying MVPs, even in the 60s and the 70s, right? In 1979, Willie Stargell and Keith Hernandez were co-MVPs. What the fuck is that? Doesn't even make sense. What do you mean co-MVPs? Did you know
Well,
in that year, Willie Stargell put up a 2.5 WAR? 2.5.
yeah.
That year, Keith Hernandez hit 11 home runs. That year, Dave Winfield put up an 8.2 FWAR, hit more home runs than both of them, and wasn't one of the co-MVPs. Had a better year than both of them. It's impossible, right, to correctly dial all of this down perfectly. So
Yeah.
what we can do is try to provide context in every area to the best of our abilities. And that's why I love looking at these, because really, it's in the eye of the beholder. What do you, as a fan, value most in a player? Is it WAR? Is it the all-around game? Are you putting more importance on defense, on base running, on all the little things that maybe are forgotten? Are you a true, I need to see some pop? I need the 50 home run guys. I need the tons of RBIs. Are you a batting average purist? Whatever your crux is, whatever your belief is, you can then use that in a GOAT debate. So what
Mhm.
I'm going to attempt to do, because remember, nobody can do it perfectly. I don't care if you've been watching baseball. Still, one of my favorite episodes that I always bring up is the Joe Posnanski interview,
Yeah.
where I had an opportunity, Jack did too. I wasn't sure if it was you or Arm. I don't even remember because I blacked out the entire time. It was just all baseball history. And I was asking
So
question and question.
it was me because I said one more for you, Joe.
And then
And
I said,
then
well, I've had more.
you said one more, and then I have one more, and then I have one more. I think you went 8 questions after I said one more from me.
And also, there's not a lot of precedent for some of these things, right? What's the precedent for Shohei Ohtani pitching and hitting? Bullet Rogan in the Negro Leagues? Babe Ruth? That's it. How else do we compare Shohei to modern times? Also,
Yeah.
the balls have been different, right? Is it fair to compare the pitching that Babe Ruth was seeing to the guys coming out of the bullpen, right? Ben Kasparius would probably win 7 Cy Youngs in the 20s. But I'm saying
Yeah.
probably. I have no idea. None of us do. We can just talk out of our asses and believe it. Doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's true. So, again, just coming into this, I'm going to bring up a lot of points where I'm sure baseball historians can go into the YouTube comments and be like, actually, Peter, this happened this, which disqualifies this. You're probably right. I'm going to do my best shot here, lay it all out, and just my main goal of this is when fans are watching this particular World Series, they realize that they are watching greatness, not just great players, right? Corey Seager is a phenomenal player. Ketel Marte last year in the World Series, phenomenal players, not pantheon greats, not
Yeah.
the guys that when you're 80, you're going to be able to tell your grandchildren, I got to watch Aaron Judge. I got to watch Shohei Ohtani, just like our grandfathers and grandmothers said, I got to watch Mickey Mantle. I got to watch Joe DiMaggio. I got to watch Sandy Koufax. We're going to be able to do that. So remember, lock in. Remember, you're watching greatness. Don't deal with people on Twitter who are going to try and tear it down. You're listening to the show. You know it, and I'm about to lay it out.
I love it. A whole bunch of bars in there. Lay it out.
Lay it out. So the first narrative that I want to bring, because Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani, they're very similar in the type of narrative that I'm going to bring up. So we have one on Ohtani, one on Judge, one on Soto, one on Mookie, and then we're going to talk about potentially the greatest team of the 21st century, and I'm going to lay it out there. So we'll start with Juan Soto. So Jack, the Yankees win the World Series. And remember, this is a hypothetical narrative that is very likely. Knowing the World Series, Will Smith on the Dodgers and Alex Verdugo on the Yankees are going to, one of them is going to win World Series MVP, and a lot of these will mean absolutely nothing.
Well, and Verdugo is going to price the Pirates out because
Exactly.
like my thought is 1+1 deal with the Pirates right now, but Verdugo is going to re-sign with the Yankees on a 7-year deal because he turns into Steve Pearce.
Clark Schmidt ends up being the best pitcher on the Yankees during the series. Alex Vesia does come back. He's the best reliever. That's just how the World Series works. But these things are possible, clearly, because these are some of the greatest players of our generation, of our entire lives.
Right.
So, first hypothetical. The Yankees win the World Series. Juan Soto wins World Series MVP. Is he truly on track for the Ted Williams comparisons? That's the take. And we hear those comparisons all the time. Juan Soto's the next Ted Williams. Juan Soto's the next Ted Williams. Ted Williams had 121 career WAR. 121. That places him 14th all time. He's a 2-time MVP winner, 521 home runs. But here's the thing. Slash 344, 482, 634 for a 191 OPS plus, which again is park adjusted and era adjusted, for an 1100 OPS for his career. For his career. Juan Soto, 288, 419, 569 for a 989 OPS, 178 OPS plus. So, knowing that he's 25 years old, he could become, right? We can assume his best years might be in front of him. We don't know. Some of the great Juan Soto years.
At least holding serve.
26 to 29. Do we get an even better Juan Soto? I don't know. Right? This is all hypotheticals, but let me just run you through a couple of things. So, if the Yankees win the World Series, Juan Soto will be the first player with 200 career home runs and World Series rings for 2 different teams before the end of his age 25 season. As I continue, I also want to shout out Peyton and I want to shout out Addison. 2 guys, killers for us over here at Just Baseball. Huge social media. Peyton's been huge in editing. They're both phenomenal. They helped me a lot with this research. Just want to put that out there. So the Yankees. So that's with Juan Soto. If he wins, point blank period, he's the only one in MLB history. That's pretty good inside of itself. The only players to have 200 home runs and 2 rings, right? Not on 2 different teams, because 2 different thing is kind of cool, but it doesn't really matter. 200 home runs, 2 rings before the end of their age 25 season are Mickey Mantle and Jimmy Fox. 2 of the greatest players of all time. Mickey Mantle, 110 F-WAR, or 110 WAR, 21st all-time, 3-time MVP, 16-time All-Star, 7-time World Series winner, 536 home runs, 298 career hitter, 977 OPS. So when I look at the straight like slash line home runs, Juan Soto has a path to be better than Mickey Mantle. Jimmy Fox, 93 WAR, 3-time MVP, 9-time All-Star, 534 home runs, career 325 hitter, 1038 OPS. So Juan Soto has the ability to pass both. If he wins this World Series, right? He could win one in the future, but do you see kind of where we're at? Do you have any questions so far?
I don't have any questions so far. I have another element to add if you didn't have similarity score on Baseball Reference. Do you have that or no?
I don't. So that'll be something that you could throw in here. Can I keep going or do you want to throw it in now?
No, you're good.
Okay. So Juan Soto is averaging about 5.5 wins per season in terms of WAR. Already at 36.7 through age 25. 55 more WAR by the end of his age 35 season, right? So the next 10 years, averaging 5.5 wins per season. Puts him about 92 WAR, reaching Jimmy Fox by 35.
Yeah.
If he averages then 4 WAR a season from age 35 to 40, puts him at 112. That's higher than Mickey Mantle, puts him right in between Ricky Henderson and Lou Gehrig for 19th all time. Now, of course, injuries, things can happen, but at the same time, Juan Soto could get even better. So, right, I'm saying 5.5 win season over the next 10 years. What if he puts up multiple 9-win seasons, 10-win seasons? It's extremely possible. So, if he were to get here, he'd be in the 15 to 20 range of the greatest players of all time. And with a couple of amazing seasons combined with World Series accolades, the Ted Williams comparisons are pretty accurate, in my opinion, when going over this.
I would love if he figured out a way to be a decent defender. That would help
That's
his
something.
case exponentially.
That's something.
He was an 8-win player and a net negative defender this year. Like,
Which
you
goes
think
to
of
show what he
how
can do.
prolific the bat is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think by bat, like, listen, in his career, he's got a 158 WRC plus in 936 games. I wanted to bring up similarity score because I think it's awesome. And I think the Hall of Fame statistics on Baseball Reference, and you can find it on essentially every individual player bio on Baseball Reference. You go to the very bottom, right in front of transactions, and you see JAWS scores, you see black and gray ink Hall of Fame monitor, and you see similarity scores. So by JAWS, they account for career WAR, 7-year peak WAR, and WAR over 162. They also have their JAWS score, and I'll save you the definition right now. But career WAR, you mentioned 36.7 on Fangraphs. He's 36.4 on Baseball Reference. 7-year peak, Soto has played 7 seasons of Major League Baseball, 36.4. The average Hall of Famer has a 7-year peak WAR of 42.4. Now, this is accounting for Soto's age 20 through 25 season.
Yes.
So you assume that the 7-year peak is going to be better than the 20 through 25 season, especially when Juan Soto's 2020 campaign was a joke because it was a 60-game regular season. By WAR over 162, the average Hall of Famer, 5.1 B WAR over 162. Soto is at 6.3, so he's clearing by north of a win. Similarity scores, so similar batters overall. It's names like Josh Hamilton, Cody Bellinger, Kevin Youkilis, Acuna. Like, those are just guys that equate to Juan Soto at this point. But similar batters through their age 25 season is really where you start to separate Soto from everybody else. The similar hitters to Juan Soto through their age 25 season: Bryce Harper, future Hall of Famer; Frank Robinson, Hall of Famer; Ken Griffey Jr., Hall of Famer; Mike Trout, future Hall of Famer; Andrew Jones, a travesty that he's not in yet; Eddie Matthews, Hall of Famer; Miguel Cabrera, future Hall of Famer; Mickey Mantle, Hall of Famer; Orlando Cepeda, Hall of Famer; and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Don't forget that Vladdy's doing this at such a young age. But my point there is this guy is doing things through age 25 that Mantle did, that Griffey did, that Eddie Matthews did, that Miguel Cabrera did. So is he there? Is he Mantle? No. Is he Mantle through his age 25 season? Yes. Yes, he is. There's a long way to go. I remember when Brandon Roy was awesome. I remember when Derrick Rose was awesome.
Two, by the way. Go. Tennis, NBA.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go. But I remember all of these young phenoms, right? That's my only thing. It's like there's a lot of time. So being the curmudgeon that I am, I'm like, hey, the odds are stacked against him because there have been a lot of people that start really well young. Now, counter, nobody has really started like this compared to Soto. So that, I think, is where, like, he is in the Trout, Harper, Griffey, Mantle, like that area of being this good at this young of an age. So I think he's absolutely pacing to be an all-time great. But like you mentioned, you laid out, that's a really hard climb to match Ted Williams. Like, really hard.
It's extremely hard. That's why I wanted to put that into perspective. And your last point, or you had 2 different points there, but the point that you made of being the somewhat of a curmudgeon, it's more than 100% valid. Like if there was more than 100%, it's 105% valid because baseball. I mean, think about what we've been watching just this season. How many guys get injured? How many? 100, right? Look at the Dodgers. We're going to do our World Series preview. Look how many players on their team
Remember,
are injured
Mookie
right
missed
now.
like a month and a half, 2 months there.
Exactly. So to say that Juan Soto already is completely jumping the gun. To say that Juan Soto already is Ted Williams, completely jumping the gun. But if he wins the World Series, seeing how the career is laid out, you can say that he is on a Ted Williams track.
For sure.
And that's what I wanted to bring up with these narratives. Now, even if he doesn't win the World Series MVP, like let's say the Yankees lose, he still has time to do it. The stats are still going to be there for him. But what I thought it brought was a little bit even more legitimacy, where let's say, because Ted Williams never won a ring. I know. And you could say, well, is it his fault? Of course it is. It's baseball. It's like impossible for one player to lead their team to a World Series. But when we are talking about the pantheon of greats, when we're reducing it down to the greatest players of all time, there are going to be some caveats. Well, Ted Williams versus Mickey Mantle. Well, Mickey Mantle won 7 rings. Ted Williams has 0, right? And then having those type of discussions, in the barbershop, like those types. Juan Soto will have things over Ted Williams, where Ted Williams might have some things over Juan Soto, but that makes it a discussion. And that at the end of the day, that's what these discussions are for anyway.
Tell you what, when you have the barbershop conversation of the trio, Soto, Mantle, Ted Williams, can you film it and just send it to me? I'm like, I want to hear what the old heads are saying right now.
That's my dream. To just be like, I want to do what LeBron does, like that barbershop
Yeah, yeah,
podcast, and just
yeah.
bring a bunch of old heads and just have debates on old baseball players. Like I want to be like boring Stephen A, where it's just him and Shannon arguing about Jordan, LeBron. I secretly just want to have that baseball debate with the minimum age has to be 65 and me
That's
just
like
go
the
back and
least
forth.
surprising thing ever.
I know. And then
Ever.
on the side, I bet on baseball. That's all I need from life. I just
Yeah.
want to do that.
All good.
But and you can come too if you want.
I think I'll sit that one out, but again, video and send it to me.
No, but just to recap on the Juan Soto thing, I think it's incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible what he's been able to do. And this World Series MVP just puts another star on the mantle of what could be one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one. So again, Judge and Ohtani are kind of together. I'll explain that later. So let's go to Mookie Betts, because this one I think is even more fascinating than the Juan Soto one. Dodgers win the World Series. He wins World Series MVP. Is he on track to be a top 20 player ever? That's the take. And I'm going to now read you some evidence. And then again, you can fight back, say not enough, whatever you want to say. Mookie Betts will have 3 World Series rings, a World Series MVP, and an MVP. Now, again, when comparing all-time greats with accolades, it's tough. From 1923 to 1953, the Yankees won the World Series 16 times in a 30-year stretch. Plenty of players like Berra, DiMaggio, Mantle. Berra has 10 rings. DiMaggio has 9. Mantle has 7. None of them won World Series MVPs. So it's tough, right? But the only players, and again, it's really tough to research this on StatHead because you can't queue up World Series rings MVPs into a search. So we kind of had to manually do this by hand. But we did our best. So if we forgot somebody, let us know in the YouTube comments. The only 2 players that we could find with at least 70 WAR and all of those accolades are Reggie Jackson and Pete Rose. None of those 2 players have 80 WAR. Reggie Jackson's about 74, Pete Rose 79. So Mookie's going to pass them over the next 2 seasons, right, if he stays healthy. So he'll be the only player with 80 career WAR, 3 rings, a World Series MVP, and an MVP. Because Derek Jeter never won an MVP. I was thinking he'd be in this, but never won an MVP. So Mookie Betts, and just to continue this, so now we know that Mookie Betts will probably become the only player in MLB history with 3 rings, a World Series MVP, and an MVP in like 2 seasons, if this happens. He's 31 right now with 70 career WAR. Say he plays 9 more seasons. 5 WAR per season, I think that's fair. 45 WAR added on if he plays until he's 40.
Yeah.
Put him at 115 career WAR. 18th all time behind Kid Nichols. If he averages just 4 wins per season over the next 9, puts him at 106, tied with Greg Maddux, 5 wins above Albert Pujols. He's at 271 career home runs. He's a 294 batter for his career. If he averages 26 home runs for the next 9 years, he's over 500 career home runs with 100 career WAR, 3 rings, an MVP, a World Series MVP. Now, there's only a handful of players with 500 home runs and 100 career WAR. Bonds, Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, Albert Pujols, Alex Rodriguez, Willie Mays, Frank Robinson, Mike Schmidt, Mickey Mantle, Ted Williams, and Mel Ott. So Mookie Betts could become one of those guys with 3 rings, a World Series MVP, and an MVP. And that's not to say that he can't win another ring, win another World Series MVP, win another MVP.
Yeah.
Is the take valid or is it not? Again, it's projecting out. He's 31.
Yeah.
I get that. And you could totally bring that up and you'd be totally right. But
I don't know, as I think out loud, I think the 2 guys that are currently in our game that fly under the radar in terms of their all-time great abilities are Manny Machado and Mookie Betts. I think those are the 2 that jump out to me because you watch Harper, you understand that this guy has the capability of being an all-time great. And that, is narrative based, but it's also statistically speaking, like he is trending that way. In Arenado, based on the accolades, like when you're watching him, you're watching a guy that is an all-time great third baseman is going to be in the Hall of Fame. You watch a guy like I mean, there are others, pitching wise. I'm thinking Verlander and Scherzer and Kershaw. Like, all those guys. You know the gravity of what they did. But I think Machado and Mookie are a little deceiving because they were never the best player in the game. I know that Mookie won an MVP, but I think even then, you probably make the argument that somebody else is the best player in baseball at
not
that
that
point.
year. Not in 2018. He had like a 10.8 WAR. They won the World Series that
Yeah,
year.
but like going into 2019, was Mookie Betts the consensus number 1 player in baseball that year? I don't think so. It felt like Yelich at that point.
I think it was Mookie. But to your point, I think the point that you're trying to make is most of Mookie's career, he hasn't been considered
He's
the
never
best.
been
Maybe
the guy.
maybe 1 year he was. And
Yeah,
that's arguable. So
yeah,
I get your
and
point.
he's just been so ridiculously freaking good
He's
all
been
the
he's
time.
been a top 5 player for 8 years.
And I think you almost like forget that he's been that for that long. Like
Yeah.
a Mookie Betts, it's just hard to understand that this guy. Like part of me is like, wow, he's already 32 years old. I remember when he debuted in 2014, but he has just racked it up, racked it up, racked it up. He's got an 897 career OPS. He's going to hit 300 homers next year. He's probably going to get to 1,000 RBIs in 2026. There's a non-zero chance that this guy hits 300 in his career. He's hitting 294 in his career,
Yeah.
just hit 289 this year, but hit 307 in 2023. Like I feel like this guy has been so good, and it's a deceivingly long time. I don't think it's crazy. I feel like it's impossible for somebody to backdoor their way into a top 20 player of all time. So I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah.
that he is that. But I do think that, when this guy hangs it up and we get over ourselves and we're done like eliminating the unanimous Hall of Famers and voting against Ken Griffey Jr. because you're not going to vote for anybody. Like once we fix this broken ass system of a bunch of old dudes screaming at clouds, like not voting for Ken Griffey Jr. to join the Hall of Fame, I think this guy is a candidate to be a unanimous Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
And that I feel like is the mark of an all-time great. I think this guy gets in on the first ballot if he does the things that you're talking about, and even if it's a subdued version of that. Say he averages 3.5 WAR over the next 8 years. I still think that this guy is a first ballot Hall of
Oh
Famer.
yeah, that's left the station. That
Which
point
is
that you're bringing up.
crazy
I
because
think
he's
that's
32 years old.
I think that's left the station. I think we're dealing with, unless something horrible happens, I think what we're dealing with now is a easily, like when somebody makes a top 100 list, he's on there. He's going to go in on the first ballot. I'm taking it a step further because I'm also taking it a step further with Juan Soto and Mookie Betts. Right, we're projecting out. These guys have largely stayed healthy for their entire careers. Right,
Yeah.
Mookie has dealt with a couple of things recently, but he's playing over 120 games every year, and those are the years that he gets hurt. The other years he's 150, 155. Same thing with Juan Soto. These guys don't get hurt. So it'd be a lot weirder if I said, hey, Jack, if we project out Byron Buxton, if we project out Christian Yelich, if we project out some of these guys who have no history of staying healthy, it's wishful thinking. These guys have stayed healthy basically their entire careers.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel, and with Mookie Betts, especially over a guy like Juan Soto, even though not really, because Juan Soto's plate discipline, he's going to walk into 150 WRC plus seasons, even if he's not that great, just because his plate discipline is so elite. So that's why these guys are so high floor. Mookie Betts, even into his old age, I think he's going to remain one of the best defenders in the league because his reads are second to none, right? The
Yeah,
speed
if he
might diminish
loses
a
a
little bit.
step, that docks him a little bit.
If he loses a step, okay, so he starts putting up 4-win seasons, right? Because the bat, there's still too much power there. There's still a ton of plate discipline. There's still so much bat to ball. That's why these guys, when projecting it out, we're not just bringing up randos here. These are some of the most consistent, high floor players in our game and therefore throughout history. So to look at Mookie Betts and realize that what I brought up, 45 career WAR at 5 per season, he could do more than that, which is putting him at 115, top 18 ever. Like, we're past that. We're thinking about Mookie Betts as a top 20 player ever.
Which is crazy.
And so do you think that's why I wanted to bring this to, because I think that was so jarring of a sentence to say to you, and probably for most of our audience listening, that immediately they're going to backtrack and be like, wait, did we skip anything? No, don't worry. I promise we didn't skip anything. We're here. It's just, can he continue this to the end? That's the question. And I think among all players, he can also play, 7 different positions? So if things were to go awry, right? Let's say the arm falls off. Baseball, you never know. Play second and play really good defense at second and still rack up tons of WAR and then just keep hitting. Juan Soto, you just put him in a corner. He's going to walk. He's going to put up a 430 OBP for 15 straight years. There's the home runs come or not. Yep. So that's why I'm bringing these guys up. And I think Mookie Betts has a strong case to be a top 20 player of all time if all of this works out. That's why I'm bringing it up. Could be. Like hypotheticals.
In the first 2 weeks of next season, he'll pass Scott Rowland, Carlos Beltran, Gary Carter, Ron Santo, Barry Larkin, maybe even a Johnny Mize.
Yeah, like he's passing borderline or Hall of Famers at age 31.
He'll pass Jeter on the WAR leaderboard by May of next year.
Yep. That's where we're at with Mookie.
Shit, I guess I just didn't realize that.
And I don't think a lot of people did. When I'm doing the research, dude, like I didn't even fully get it. And then when you lay it all out, it's insane. You start to realize, oh my God, I truly am watching the greatest players of all time. Which is why that's the only reason I'm doing this segment. Is your reaction right now.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, this is good for a podcast where I'm just sitting here and I'm like, oh shit, what do I say now?
It's great theater for all the people watching on YouTube. They have to love this. Jack's face just looking at the numbers being like, shit.
I mean, dude, Mookie Mookie has a career 69.6 WAR and a 138 OPS plus. Jeter, if I go back to it, 69.6 and 138. Is that what I said?
Yep.
Okay. Jeter, as this loads here. Jeter, a career 71.3 and a 115 OPS plus.
I'm a Yankee fan. Mookie is going to blow Derek Jeter's career out of the water.
Yeah, which is insane. The winning is the big separator for Jeter, and I know that Jeter is a hot button topic when it comes to war and all-time greatness and everything like that. But that's hard for me to realize that Mookie is going to be better than Jeter by WAR like before the All-Star break next year.
And that's why I wanted to throw the World Series MVP in it. Jeter has 5 rings, 1 World Series MVP. If Mookie wins a World Series MVP, that's what we're looking at here. He's now just increasing pantheon type discussions. So then when you realize that, then what does Jeter have over Mookie in anything? 2 more rings? Better team in the middle of a dynasty? I can't believe this is coming out of my mouth right now. I mean, Derek Jeter is one of my favorite players. Him and Mo.
Man.
My 2 favorite players ever. Mariano is my favorite player ever, though.
Yeah. Well, because it was just game over. Like, you could go to bed. He saved you so many minutes of sleep.
Yeah.
He was like, oh, Mo's in. Time to go to bed.
I just can't believe that he has allowed less earned runs in the playoffs than Emmanuel Clase, and Clase has like 12 innings, and he has 140.
Yeah. I mean, welcome to the Mo experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
So how are we doing right now? Do we feel good? Because this next one is going to get even crazier.
Yeah, we feel decent about it. I will say before we get to that.
Yes.
Quick break.
So the next one, like I said, it combines Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. And I want to start with Judge because a lot of what applies to Judge applies to Shohei. But Shohei also pitches. So after that, after you hear everything from Judge, we might be having even bigger conversations about Shohei. Okay. So we'll start again with Aaron Judge. The Yankees win the World Series. He wins World Series MVP. Does he have the greatest season in MLB history? You hear that and you think, what do you mean? Bonds, 2000, 2001. Let's go through it. Only 8 players have ever been to the World Series after hitting 50 home runs in the regular season. Babe Ruth did it 3 times. So I also want to make something clear. You guys know I'm a big baseball historian, right? I'm not as smart as the real ones that you see like on the Ken Burns documentaries, but I love it. And I do it all the time. In my free time, I'm just deep in 1920s baseball. I will say, the more research I do, Babe Ruth is the GOAT.
Yeah.
He's the GOAT. No, because
you're
everybody hates that. Everybody hates that.
You
it's
say
Bonds,
that
it's someone else. It's Babe Ruth.
No, I mean, you say that like it's this boiling hot take, but like the other
It
hot
is.
takes
On this current internet, it is.
Which is so weird. I can't even pretend to make up like the quality of player that Babe Ruth was playing.
I don't know. I feel like I
that's the
can.
argument.
I feel like I
can.
I can from those grainy videos that I don't even know are real.
So my thought is, do you think it was equivalent to Atlantic 10 baseball right now?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's so tough. I don't
and
know.
That's not an indictment on the old guard that is like pro Ruth and all that. I'm just saying, I don't know if 90 existed back then.
I know, but he has like 700
I
home
know,
runs.
I know, and that is no indictment because he was playing relative to the rest of the league, and the rest of the league has gotten better, generation by generation by generation, and we're, 4 or 5 generations removed from Babe Ruth at this point.
I think the argument is because right now, I think Carlos Santana is more talented than Babe Ruth.
Yeah, probably.
But when we're talking about the greatest players of all time, we're not talking about the most talented. Because if you want to have the most talented debate, it's Shohei Ohtani, end of discussion, end of everything.
Correct.
The most talented, and it's not even close. It isn't. Better than Bonds. I don't care. Better than Bonds. Because even from 2000, the type of fastballs that he was seeing, like Gagne, that incredible at-bat with Eric Gagne. Gagne was touching 100, and people were losing their minds, and he was on steroids. Eric Gagne was.
Yeah.
Like, we're seeing guys who I haven't heard of throw 103. And it's just, it's not even the same ball game as 20 years ago. So Shohei, but if we're talking about the greatest, then era matters. And comparing them to their own era matters. And if we want to do that, Babe Ruth is the GOAT.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, your GOAT should either be Shohei or Babe Ruth. That's my GOAT debate opinion.
Okay.
But we'll continue. So again, Babe Ruth did it 3 times. Mickey Mantle did it twice. Luis Gonzalez, Albert Bell, Roger Maris, Greg Vaughn, and Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. Like already here, that's insane. Just that. Okay? But none of those names won the World Series MVP. None of them did. Granted, the World Series MVP wasn't invented until 1955, like I said earlier. And from 1955 to 1968, 12 pitchers won to just 2 hitters. Seems like a pitcher bias to me, where the best pitcher in the World Series would just win it. Because how can you, unless these pitchers just got destroyed, like Frank Robinson, who we're going to talk about, won it in 1966. Bobby Richardson won it in, I think, 1978 or something. I got to look back and figure that out. I think it might have been earlier. I don't know. But regardless, those are the only 2 hitters who won it. So, again, like the first MVP was created in 1931. So Babe Ruth, being one of 8 players to make it to the World Series after hitting 50 home runs, he did it in 1921, 1927, and 1928. There wasn't even an MVP award back then.
Yeah.
So again, how do you evaluate that? So I'm just throwing in all the context, which makes this very, very tough, but we all know these now. Technically, Mantle and Maris qualified for the World Series MVP, right? That year, they could have won it, but again, pitcher trends. Now, maybe they just weren't as good as those pitchers, but they didn't win it. So, the only players to ever win the World Series MVP and the regular season MVP in the same season are Sandy Koufax, Reggie Jackson, and Frank Robinson. Now, if we're talking about the greatest season of all time on the pitching side, because we have to separate them.
Yeah.
Sandy Koufax dominates everybody.
Yeah.
In 1963, Sandy Koufax won the Cy Young, he won the MVP, and he won the World Series MVP. He went 25-5 for a 1.83 ERA. He had 306 strikeouts and 311 innings with a 1.85 FIP and a 9.2 F4. Is it fair to call that the greatest pitching season of all time? Now, there's others. Doc Gooden in 85 put up a 13-win season.
I mean, Doc had some crazy ones. Randy Johnson had some crazy ones. Pedro had some crazy ones. But like in terms of 4-year peak, nobody's been Sandy Koufax.
And do you think that it's fair, if we're going to call something the greatest season of all time, having a MVP and a World Series MVP means a little bit more than just an MVP during the regular season, even if that said season was better in the regular season? So let me give you an example. Is Sandy Koufax's 1963, where he did all that, won the MVP and won the World Series MVP, better than Doc Gooden in 85, where he had a 1.55 ERA and 271 innings and a 13.3 WAR? What's better?
It's kind of, it's so apples and oranges.
Right? And that's what makes it tough. But I'm just curious from your baseball fan opinion, right? Because there is no wrong opinion here, in my opinion. A lot of opinions here. What do you think is better?
I always side with the hitter.
No, I'm talking about between Doc and Sandy.
Yeah.
Like, just so Sandy. We get, you think Sandy's is better. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think those accolades just mean a little bit more, both otherworldly dominant, but one got to the mountaintop. And that's why we play sports, to get to the mountaintop. Mm-hmm. So, like Cal Ripken in 1991 put up an 11.5 WAR, 34 home runs, 940 OPS. Like, Judge wins the MVP, World Series MVP. Like, that season's better. Barry Bonds in 2000 and 2001. Like, are those seasons better than Judge's or Ohtani's if either of them win the World Series MVP? I would give it to Judge or Ohtani, I think.
I would give it to Judge or Ohtani. The only season that jumped to my mind, and I'll pitch you on it right now.
Go ahead.
Is Mantle in 1956. The postseason was so, like, there wasn't, it was the World Series. You win the American League, you go to the World Series. Like, that's how that works. You won the pennant in the regular season.
I'm glad you brought that up because, for example, Soto, Judge, all these modern guys, even up to the 60s, they had the divisional series, the championship series. There wasn't even that before 1950.
Yeah, I mean, like, dude, Jose Altuve is going to set the all-time postseason home run record.
Yeah,
Altuve's playing like 10x the number of postseason games that anybody else is
exactly.
playing behind him. So
Exactly.
that's really important context. I pitch you Mantle in 1956 because Mickey Mantle had a unanimous MVP year, an 11.2 WAR season. He slashed 353, 464, 705. So an 1169 OPS, 52 homers, drove in 130. Those both led Major League Baseball. And in the World Series, which they won, he had 3 homers in 7 games and OPS over 1,000. He didn't win World Series MVP because another guy threw a perfect game in that one, Don Larson.
Yeah,
So that matters. um,
definitely.
I will say Mantle having 3 homers in 56, he could have very well won the World Series MVP.
Definitely.
So I would say that season from Mantle is more impressive from Judge. And frankly, like the DS and the CS kind of eliminated Judge from this conversation here because if Judge was awesome in the DS and awesome in the CS, then I think that we could be having this conversation about Aaron Judge. I think he had too much time to negate that from his capabilities.
Do you think it's fair? Because let's say he has this great World Series run. Let's say it's 400 with 4 home runs. The
Yeah.
postseason so far is 9 games that he's played in.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't think that wins world, because remember, this is the hypothetical that he wins World Series
Yeah.
MVP. And if
Yeah.
we're comparing it to Mantle, right? Judge 322, 458, 701 with 58 home runs, 144 RBIs, 218 WRC plus, 11.2 FWAR2. So like from a regular season statistical standpoint, just as good, if not better than Mantle.
I wouldn't say that.
Who had more homers?
Judge, who
Who
hit for a
had
higher average.
322 to what was Mantle?
353?
353. How many home runs did Mantle hit that year?
52?
52 to 58, 218 WRC plus, same amount of Mickey Mantle. And what was that? That was year
56.
1956, 202 WRC plus. I mean, just so fucking close. Yeah, I think that it would be right there. But that's a great one to pitch, right? Because Mickey Mantle should have won the MVP, the World Series MVP, arguably over Darn Larson, but whatever. But let's say Judge hits 4 home runs, hits 400, wins the World Series MVP. You still don't think that puts him over Mantle in that 1956 season?
No, and I'm being totally honest. Like I think that the DS and the CS hurt him in that case because
That's
the
fair.
narrative existed that he was not a postseason performer and he had a pretty crappy DS.
Okay, so I'm glad about this. So you've somewhat agreed. It's hard to take it all into with Soto and Mookie. I understand just listening to
There's a
this.
lot of stuff. Yeah,
It's a
there's a
lot of
lot of
stuff.
stuff coming at me.
But you agree with the sentiment of where I'm going with those two.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
Judge, you don't really. You think there are better seasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you would say the same for Ohtani?
Yeah, because he's a DH. Like, and I know that that is. I don't even think it's short-sighted. I think he's a designated hitter. Like he's spending half the game in the dugout. Like
Fair.
he pitched this year. Like yes, it's undoubtedly the greatest season we've ever seen, and there's nobody even close. Stolen bases are easier to come by now with pickoff rules, with pitch clock. I'm not going to say the bigger bases make stealing bases easy, or because like I don't think bigger bases are that much of an impact whatsoever. I think the two big, impacts on the stolen base increase are, the pitch clock number one, far and away, because when that clock starts to dip down, a guy's going to the plate, and the number of disengagements rule. But I think stolen bases are a little bit easier to come by. He had the opportunity to prioritize them, spending a year off the mound, and he was a designated hitter. So is 50-50 unprecedented? Yes, he's literally done something that nobody has ever done before. But he was also a designated hitter doing this.
I'm so glad you brought all of this up because, again, these are hypotheticals, these are narratives. And I love what you were doing right there, right? You said, yeah, 50-50. But that's why I love these conversations. When you're talking about pure greatness,
Yeah.
you start to discount a couple of things that are just unbelievable.
Yeah,
Shohei
correct.
going 54, 59. You're like,
But
well, he was a DH.
the
When we're
standard is just
comparing to
so
the greatest.
stupidly tall. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm glad. So we've come to the conclusion, and you kind of did convince me with the Mickey Mantle. It's at least so razor thin that it defeats what I'm talking about. You can't make a good argument that Judge would have the greatest season of all time over Mantle. It would
Yeah.
definitely be a discussion.
Yeah.
It would be like a fun barbershop, like what we're doing right now.
Right.
But
Right.
it wouldn't be the answer. So that's why I'm glad it brought it up. So I did have some more stats on this one. And it's mostly it's like Sandy Koufax did it, Reggie Jackson, MVP, World Series MVP, but that year, right, he hit 32 home runs, 161 OPS plus, 7.1 F4. Like that's not the greatest season of all time.
Yeah.
It just isn't.
No.
Frank Robinson, though, in his first year, 1966 Orioles, this is like almost why I wanted to bring up this point, was it's actually a secret covert narrative about Frank Robinson. This whole podcast was to get me to talk about Frank Robinson.
Perfect. Yeah. I thought it was going to end with Enos Slaughter somehow, but Frank Robinson's a better landing spot.
So in 1966 with the Orioles, in his first year with the team, imagine this Orioles fans. A guy comes over, his first year with the team, 49 home runs, hits 316, 195 WRC plus, 8.2 F4, won the World Series and the World Series MVP. That's already insane in itself. But when we talk about the greatest players of all time, Frank Robinson needs to be close to your top 10, or at least in the consideration for it. 107 career WAR. He's the first African-American manager in Major League Baseball history. He's a two-time MVP winner. Of course, he's a Hall of Famer because he won the Rookie of the Year. He won the Triple Crown, 14-time All-Star, two-time World Series champion. He won a Gold Glove, won an All-Star MVP, won a World Series MVP, won a batting title, and was a Manager of the Year. One of the greatest in baseball history throughout it, not just a player, but as a manager. Incredible career, 586 home runs, hit 294 for his career. Genuinely one of the greatest players to ever play the game. And I think if you're talking about baseball careers, easy top 10. Easy top 10. So just wanted to bring that up. So you disagree with, so we know this now. Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani are not going for the greatest of all time in terms of a season.
I don't think so.
Which is fair. So. And I think that you're right. I think you kind of convinced me, but they're in the conversation for it just for people to continue to watch.
Yeah.
One more thing that I wanted to tie in Ohtani. Let's say the Dodgers win, Ohtani wins World Series MVP. Then, right, we're projecting out. Pitches a 3.2 ERA to 160 innings next year. Goes 50-50 again. Is he the greatest of all time?
Yeah.
Is it then over?
I mean,
it's tough. It's a very tough question.
Yeah. What chunk of the pie chart pertains to accumulation? Because he's going to be nowhere close to the accumulation.
1,000%. But then when we talk about Sandy Koufax, right? He had like 7 great years and is one of the best pitchers ever.
Yeah. No, I don't think that it's as large as I think the general population would say. I think that Ohtani at this point has fully proven that he's the greatest player of all time. I don't think there's anything left to prove.
I think he's proven he's the most talented baseball player to ever live.
Yeah, but like what's really the difference between talented and greatest when you're executing? I understand talent when you're not executing. Like Byron Buxton is an all-time talent in Major League Baseball. Acuna is an all-time talent in Major League Baseball. Acuna has, I think, 2 full seasons of executing that all-world talent, that all-time talent. Ohtani now has several seasons that will never be replicated in the history of this game. And, like, isn't that the whole point behind greatness? Like, you do something that nobody else can do? Like, Ruth was that because Ruth pitched and he hit. And, like, if Ruth just hit, it's a fully open conversation when it comes to greatest player of all time. There are guys with more homers than him. There are guys with a higher batting average than him. Like it's a bunch of things like that. But Ruth was unique in his greatness and his execution of that talent. Ohtani has a one of a kind toolbox and he executes that in a one of a kind way. What do you do if you're the most talented player on the planet? Well, you have a 50 homer, 50 stolen base season, something that nobody has ever done. Well, you put up what, 2 wins per month over the course of a season like he did last year before he stopped pitching. I mean, this guy is setting a new standard for himself every single freaking year. And isn't that the point when you're so far and away the best in the world at what you do? You set a new standard and you find that defines the greatest player of all time to me. So that is like why I'm already willing to say it.
I don't have anything to add. I think that was beautiful. I think I'm in the same exact boat. For me to officially call him the greatest of all time, I need him to do that next year, or at
Okay.
least some version of that.
Yeah.
I'm already there at most talented, but greatest is another conversation.
Yeah, and it's going to be a couple more years, and I don't think that the slice of the pie chart is zero when it comes to accumulation. I think it's a little bit less than 50%. Um, which you may say, wow, that's a really low number. No, I think it's a pretty high number because I think the Koufax point is perfect. Like I think the Kershaw point, Koufax and Kershaw are arguably two of the top three, top four pitchers of all time.
Yep.
And Kershaw, I know he's been good when he's been on the mound, but like he hasn't been on the mound consistently since he was 33, 34 years old.
How about Jacob deGrom?
DeGrom, I don't know because the accumulation is so far off.
I know, but at his peak, he was more
No,
talented,
by
I think,
talent,
than
he's an
Kershaw.
all-time
Yeah,
talent. But in terms of the execution, I don't think we've seen him execute enough.
I agree.
So
I agree.
that's where the pie chunk of accumulation comes in.
Yeah, and I think that just to put that in perspective for people is important. So the last one before we get to the top 10 World Series moments. First, I think if the Dodgers win, it just legitimizes 2020, which I think is important for
Yeah.
Dodger fans. I don't think they're going to outright say it, but they hear the Mickey Mouse World Series. Now, I've never been in that boat. I know
Yeah.
Aram is in that boat, and it's always a fun discussion to have. I don't think he like if you really like put him up to a lie detector test, I'm sure he would think that the 2020 was real, but he makes the jokes a lot, which is fine. Like it's funny. Like Dodger fans take it seriously as they should, but it is funny for the rest of us. But them winning a World Series here dispels that. Nobody will then question the 2020 World Series. You won it again in 2024. Signed, sealed, delivered. It's over. Do you agree with that? Before we get into the much bigger take.
Yeah, I think it's stupid that 2020 World Series is entirely discredited.
Yeah, I agree
So
with you.
I guess like yeah, for the sake of that, yes, I'm with you that
Yes.
it
I
entirely
think
negates it.
I think even the biggest haters of the Dodgers, that's who I'm talking about. The biggest Dodger haters who think 2020 wasn't real are then going to have to be like, well, they won it again in 2024. I can't really do this anymore.
Yeah,
And
no,
I
I
think
mean
that's huge for Dodger fans.
it's like saying the like I think that the Astros next World Series title after the 17 title meant everything.
Exactly. Right. It meant a ton for that fan base. And I
Yeah.
think this one means a ton. Very different circumstances, though. The
Very
Astros
different.
cheated. The
You're right.
Dodgers did not cheat. It was just a 60-game season. And what sucks for Dodger fans is that their other team that they're probably a fan of, the Lakers, also won it that year. There's another sport reference from your boy over here.
Yeah, that was good.
Like, that sucks. They got their chips and nobody cares about them.
Right.
But it's not funny, Dodger fans. I'm not laughing at all. Um, what it could do for both the Dodgers and the Yankees, which is fascinating here, they could become the greatest team of the 21st century. Because right now it's neck and neck. So the Red Sox might have the edge as the greatest team of the 21st century. They're the team that has 4 World Series. They've been to the playoffs 11 times and they have 5 division titles. Now, they don't come close to the Yankees and Dodgers in terms of playoff appearances and division titles. But the end goal is rings. The Red Sox have 4 of them. But let me bring up the other teams. So the Yankees, if they win, they'll now have 3 World Series, been to the playoffs 19 times, 13 division titles, and they've lost 2 World Series as well. So they would have gone 3 for 5, losing in 2001 to the Diamondbacks, in 2003 to the Marlins. So The Yankees, if they win this, would you say it's fair they're the greatest team of the 21st century?
The Yankees?
Yes. Hearing that, the Red Sox, 4 World Series, 11-time playoffs, 5 division titles. Yankees would have 3 World Series in 2000 and 2009, and now in 2024. Playoffs 19 times, 13 division titles. So almost double the amount of playoff appearances, double the amount of division titles, 1 less ring.
So I would say no, because the Yankees did just go 15 years without a World Series appearance, and the Red Sox, they spread it out like 04, 07, 13, 18. They've been pretty decently separated throughout the course of the 21st century. So
Mhm.
I do think that winning trumps all when you talk about organizational excellence. Like, you're measured by World Series.
Definitely.
You're measured by, like reaching the mountaintop. And I think that the Red Sox have done a better job of reaching the mountaintop, literally, because they've won it 4 times compared to the Yankees, 3 if they win it this go around.
I'm gonna be honest. I think that's an anti-Yankees take right there,
Okay.
because the Yankees, you've seen them, they have the longest standing record for seasons over 500.
Yeah.
So the point is to win every game that you can. And if the Yankees are 1 ring short, but the Red Sox have finished in last place in 4 of the last 5 seasons.
So when was the last memorable great Yankees team? Before this year? Was it 2009?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about just winning the World Series, yeah,
No, I'm talking about
2009.
memorable great Yankees teams.
I mean, the
Like, which year?
2017 Yankees going up against those Astros were phenomenal.
They
They're
were
an
really good.
amazing team.
They were
Yes.
really good, but they didn't get to the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess this argument is all mute. So you're just Red Sox have 1 more, so it's over, which I
I
guess
think
is
so.
fine.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I do think
I
that it comes down
disagree.
to rings.
I disagree. I think if it's 1 ring less, we start to factoring everything else. And when everything else is so gaudy and so much larger, counting in the Red Sox tons of last place finishes, I think there's a very sound argument for the Yankees. Now you flip it to the other side with the Dodgers. Lost the World Series in 2017, lost the World Series in 2018, but won it in 2020. Let's say they win it in 2024. They've been to the playoffs 16 times since 2000. They have more division titles than the Yankees at 14, and they would be a 2-time champion. Now, right, you're taking a ring away from the Yankees. The Yankees still have 2. Dodgers now have 2. Red Sox still have 4. Dodgers would have more division titles, less playoff appearances. So with them and the Yankees, it's pretty damn close. But recency bias may put them over the edge of the Yankees. I think that's might be fair, right? Because if we're talking about the Yankees, like 21st century, yes, you can include 2000, but like them going to the World Series was 2001, 2003.
Yeah.
Long standing, not really getting there, versus the Dodgers been there a lot more recently. However, you want to weigh that too. I just wanted to bring it up because I don't think that the Red Sox are the clear answer just because they've won 4 rings.
Yeah. And I just like,
But it's okay if you think that. I'm sure there will be people in the YouTube comments who agree with you, and there will be people in the YouTube comments who agree with me. I think
yeah,
it's just your preference. And that's why, again, these debates are so great because everyone has all the stats to back up their argument. What do you value more?
right.
Getting there more consistently, winning the division, going to the playoffs every single year, or winning 4 times, finishing in last place, not nearly only 5 division titles in 24 years, 11 playoff runs. So you're actually missing the playoffs more than you're making it. But when you did make it, you won 4. I don't know. I I I think I'd rather the Yankees and the Dodgers. I think. But then that's
I,
a bunch of heartbreak too. But it's like I'd rather get to the playoffs than just miss it and finish last. I don't know.
no, I think I'd rather, I'm thinking if I'm born in the year 2000, I'd rather be a Red Sox fan over both of those organizations, personally.
I think that's fine. I think it's fair. I think it's again, it's preference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
So
is.
that's
And
it.
like, I just prefer getting to the mountaintop.
And I'm not gonna go against that. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of opinion. So those are the narratives. I thought it was fun.
Damn. Yeah, no, it was good. It was a lot of numbers. So
Yeah.
if you need a little break, just take a stroll down memory lane with us. We've already kept you for about an hour and 5 minutes, but I will walk you through quickly what I deem the World Series moment from each of the last 10 fall classics, just to get you excited for this one a little bit more. 2023, obviously the Rangers beat the D-backs. I've got Adolis Garcia's walk-off homer in the 11th inning in game one.
You thought
No.
the Corey Seager home run where it goes,
Yeah, I was expecting you to like laugh and be like, "No, you don't." Corey Seager in the ninth
okay.
before that off Paul Sewald to tie it.
Yeah.
Adolis had the homer, but like, hey, you're already even. Corey Seager's homer, and we talked about that. That display of emotion from Corey Seager just never came,
It just
ever
looked, it
until
literally,
then.
that was a like, I'm holding a lightsaber
Yeah,
and like I'm a Jedi about to go into battle.
yeah.
Like in
No,
Game of
it was
Thrones, Jon Snow when he's got a sword.
right. That
Yeah.
was absolutely the moment of the 2023 World Series. It was Seager homering in game one to tie it against Sewald in the ninth. 2022, whole game, Javier, Abreu, Montero, Presley, combined no hitter in game four of the World
Hmm.
Series.
I
Like,
remember that. I was on Philly's money line there, and I already gave the Christian Javier isn't that good. That was a
yep.
very low point in like, do I even know ball? Like it just in the podcast history, I was against him money wise and narrative wise. I got
Yeah.
crushed there.
Yeah. So that was the moment I think in 2022.
And
In
sorry, one
21,
other thing. I watched
yeah.
it in a bar, in a Phillies bar. So like
Oh,
I've shared all their misery as a fan, basically, because all of my money, all of my narratives were all pointed against that. So I felt that loss as similarly as I can to a Phillies fan when I'm not.
yeah. 2021, I don't think there were very many, moments to pick from. Like I wanted to just say the night shift as a whole, like
Mm.
Jackson to Matzik to Minter to Smith, like that was awesome. But the moment was Jorge Soler's 3-run homer in game 6. Like it was one of those where it came off the bat and it was like, wait, where did the ball go? Because it was 109.6 off the bat, 446 feet, cleared the tracks, left Minute Maid in left.
First ever Peter Vision home run.
Was it?
That was not 446.
No, that was
That was
587.
700. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was way farther. That
Yeah.
was like the hardest home run I remember like watching, I think ever. I don't know.
Because it was
At the
just, it was
time, it was like the
so
hardest hit ball.
automatic.
Yeah. Like, the
Uh,
only other home runs I can kind of remember of like, oh my God, that went so far and
you were
high.
down against Robbie Ray a couple postseasons ago.
Jordan against Jose Alvarado too.
Yeah, true.
Kyle Schwarber where he hit it like on top of that Wrigley wall, like on top of the scoreboard.
When he busted the Budweiser sign
Yeah,
down
I
the right
remember
field
that.
line. That was chunky Schwarber. That was young Schwarber.
Yeah, that was young. That one blew me away.
Yeah.
There's a couple Stanton and Judge home runs in there, but like those come to mind.
Yeah.
I think it was against Alvarado over Robbie Ray, just because Alvarado was throwing harder. That's the only reason.
Yeah,
So it
but
got to go
Ray
off the
was
bat
like,
faster.
I mean, Jordan just went down and annihilated a pitch. And I was like, that was hilarious. 2020, you're not going to like it. Kevin Cash taking out Blake Snell in the 6th inning. Like that
was
was
the
the World
moment.
Series moment.
That was the moment. You're right. Well,
Brett Phillips
I
did
don't mind
something
it.
cool.
Yeah.
Like, remember Julio Urias getting the final out? I thought that was awesome, but
Yeah.
like that was the moment. Cash taking out Snell.
100%. You're right.
2019, Howie Kendrick for the
Mm.
Nationals off the foul pole down the right field line in game 7, down 2-1 in the 7th inning, gave him a 3-2 lead. That's how the Nats won game 7.
That's an easy one. Love that.
Very easy. 2018, Nathan Eovaldi in game 3. This was when the Red Sox beat the Dodgers. I do remember Sale just wiping out Machado for the final out of the World Series on a disgusting pitch. Disgusting. But on 1-day rest, Eovaldi 6 innings, 97 pitches after entering a game tied at 1 in the 12th inning.
They don't
Like
make them like that anymore.
Eovaldi's nuts.
Yeah.
That was the moment of that World Series.
That was the moment. That's where probably nuts started in the World Series.
Probably.
Madison Bumgarner in 2014.
Like, and nobody was watching it either. 2017, the entirety of Game 5 in Houston. I'm picking a full game again. Do you remember this one that well? Astros took it on a walk-off single in the 10th from Alex Bregman. They beat the Dodgers 13-12 in 10 innings in a game that took 5 hours and 17 minutes.
Yes, I do.
I think Fox ran out of commercials. Like I think they held it until like between the top of the 10th and the bottom of the 10th. It was just one of those games where it didn't feel like a snoozer because again it was 13-12 and every fucking pitch mattered. It was crazy.
What inning did that game end in?
10.
10th. Okay. For
13 to
whatever
12
reason,
and 10.
my brain watching that, I felt like that was a 13 inning, 14
No,
inning.
it was again there were a billion
Yeah.
runs, 25 combined runs and it was a 13-12 win in 10 innings.
I think we're going to get one of those games in this World Series. I do. I think it's going to be one of those Clark Schmidt bullpen versus bullpen game where
Yeah.
like they throw Landon Knack out there and it's 15-14 in the 8th.
Yeah.
And everyone's just going nuts.
2016, I'm picking a losing player, but this was my most intense reaction to a single moment in my baseball life. Rajay Davis taking Aroldis Chapman deep to force extras. I mean, that was it. I jumped up. That somehow shot a jolt of electricity through me and sucked the life out of me at the same time.
Remember watching in 2016, freshman dorms.
Yeah.
I mean, just glued to the TV. And I'm a Yankees fan. Glued.
Like
Best World Series I've ever seen.
yeah,
By
I think
far.
the final out was a firm runner up. Just the dribbler. I think it was Michael Martinez, the dribbler off
Yeah, to get Bryant.
Montgomery. Yeah, Bryant DeRizzo. I'm blanking on Montgomery's first name. What was Montgomery's first name? Mike Montgomery. Does that sound right?
Sounds right.
Lefty.
Yep.
I think that was it.
Funky lefty. They were like 90, maybe.
Yeah. Two more years, 2015. This was kind of a clunker because KC won it in 5. Eric Hosmer's dash from third to home in New York.
You just
When
said that, and the highlight just went into my brain. Just
yeah, and
these are
like
great.
it
These are
was
great.
I thought it was like an objectively not good base running play, but like he scored because the first baseman threw the ball to the backstop. So that was the moment. And then 2014, on 2 days rest, Madison Bumgarner works 5 shutout innings out of the bullpen in Game 7 and got the final out on that pop up and foul ground of Pablo Sandoval. That postseason for Mad Bum might have killed him. He
I think it
set a
killed him.
major league record 52 2/3 innings in a single postseason. That, of course, is a major league record. Opponents hit 153 against him, 45 Ks, 6 walks, and he had a 1.03 ERA in 52 2/3 that postseason.
Okay, so all right, I wanted to look something up because Shane Bieber won the Cy Young in 2020, pitching to a 1.63 ERA in
I think he threw 60
77
innings.
innings.
77.
77. So Madison Bumgarner didn't throw quite as many, but it was close, and he
He got
was
close.
better against playoff teams pitching on back-to-back days.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Unreal. So that's what we got.
All right. Hopefully everybody enjoyed this episode. I know I did. And if you did too, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe on YouTube. And if you want to help out even more, it's the best way to support this podcast. Rate, review, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. 5 stars, even leaving a written review, greatly appreciated. If you're in the market for a little bit of merch, code JB15, 15% off merch. You can find that in the episode description. If you're buying World Series tickets, I mean, $20 off your first order. Code just baseball and game time. I know they are insane. $20 helps. And then code just baseball on BetMGM. Get into that bullpen jackpot. We'll see you tomorrow. World Series preview with the 3 of us. I cannot wait. For Jack McClellan, I am Peter Apple. With that, thank you, everybody.